4 weird stories from WWII you probably never heard of. There are many heartbreaking tales of sacrifice, bravery, and misanthropy from World War II. However, other World War II tales are simply plain bizarre. Here are the strangest 5. 1. Going the battle? Put on your tie. General George Patton was renowned for his meticulous attention to detail. He thought that a soldier would perform well on the important things if he paid attention to the little things. The appropriate wearing of uniforms was one of the things General Patton was quite particular about. In order to succeed General McChrystal as commander of the Second Corps, he traveled to North Africa. After Lloyd Fredenhall's forces suffered severe losses at the Battle of Kasserine Pass, Patton discovered Second Corps in a complete state of disrepair. He noted that he observed no salutes in his diary, any attire, and generally hell. How can we trust soldiers to fight when we can't trust them to wear their uniforms properly? Patton wrote in an order to immediately turn things around, starting with the outfits. Even when using the restrooms, all troops would be required to have their steel helmets strapped, unrolled sleeves, and leggings under pain of a $25 fine, half a month's salary for a private. Even during combat, officers were mandated to wear their ties. It was inevitable that the men would be furious with Patton as a result of his orders. Patton was not at all bothered by this. The British had a very low impression of the combat prowess of American forces following the humiliating U.S. defeat at Kasserine, which Patton took very personally. The British setting up battle schools for American forces, assigning British leaders to American units, and sending arduously minute operational commands to American units may have been well-intentioned, but it was terribly offensive. In his first engagement as commander, Patton turned the Corps around and trampled the German Afrika Korps. This disproved the idea that American soldiers were of inferior caliber and that Nazis were 10-foot-tall supermen. The German forces had been beaten badly by men wearing neckties to battle. General Patton had some pretty tight regulations regarding how they should wear their uniforms, but they didn't really apply to him. U.S. general officers at the period had a lot of freedom in how they wore their own uniforms because it was one of the perks of position. A non-standard Eisenhower waistcut jacket, riding jodhpurs, a polished helmet, cavalry boots, and an ivory-handled Colt 6-shooter on his belt were Patton's personal preferences. He did, however, continue to wear a necktie. 2. The Korean who fought for the Nazis, Soviets, and Japanese. Korean Yang Kyungjong, drafted into the Imperial Japanese Army at the age of 18, found himself engaged in combat with the Red Army in Mongolia in 1938. He was taken prisoner by the Soviets there. Yang accomplished a remarkable feat by surviving over 3 years as a POW. By 1942, the Red Army was severely short on personnel, and Yang quickly joined its ranks. However, he was dispatched to the west to fight the Nazis rather than staying in Asia to secure the Soviet border against Japan. He was taken prisoner by the Wehrmacht in 1943 during the Third Battle of Kharkiv. Yang was compelled to enlist in the Third Reich's East Battalions and dispatched once more west, this time to France, as the Germans were experiencing their own manpower issues. Yang was taken prisoner once more in 1944, this time by paratroopers from the 101st Airborne Division, probably Easy Company of the 2nd Battalion of the 506th. Yeah, the Easy Company, of Band of Brothers fame. Yang was transferred from an American in the United States to a British POW camp. Yang was released when the conflict was over. He could have been denied citizenship due to his service in foreign militaries, but instead of going back to South Korea and dealing with some uncomfortable inquiries from the newly founded Republic of South Korea, he was allowed to stay in the U.S. and settled in Illinois. He reportedly continued to reside there until his death in 1992 at the age of 72. Yang Kyungjong's amazing life story was attempted to be told in the South Korean film My Way in 2011. 3. World War II's longest battle. Some extraordinarily protracted engagements occurred during World War II. Weeks or even months may pass between battles. But something totally else lasted 5 years, 8 months, and 5 days in the longest fight of World War II. This was, of course, the Battle of the Atlantic. Additionally, it was the conflict in which the most Allied nations took part. Even Cuba joined the conflict. The internal conflict between the Free and Vichy French armies was also depicted. On the Allied side, 36,000 civilian seamen perished along with the loss of 175 warships and 741 aircraft. 30,000 military personnel, 850 warships, and an unknown number of aircrafts. In September 1939, just hours after Germany invaded Poland, the Battle of the Atlantic started. It didn't come to a stop until a Norwegian minesweeper and 2 freighters were sunk by U-boats in May 1945, just hours before Germany submitted. The course of naval conflict was altered by the Battle of the Atlantic. When the war first broke out, the majority of the world's navies thought of submarines as reconnaissance vessels for battleship surface fleets looking to participate in large-caliber gun conflicts. The British continued to feel that surface ships assaulting their convoys posed a bigger threat to their shipping even after U-boats started sinking merchant ships in the early months of the war. But the simple truth is that, by a wide margin, the world's fleet submarines sank the majority of the ships during World War II. More than 1,200 ships totaling 13 million tons of commerce would be sunk by U-boats. Almost 5,000 ships and almost 21 million tons of Allied cargo would be lost due to all causes. In addition to gathering intelligence, inserting convert troops, and saving fallen pilots, submarines became outstanding scouts. The battleship and cruiser were rendered obsolete as armament platforms after World War II, and the submarine and aircraft carrier had emerged as the most significant strategic naval weapons of the future. The USS Nautilus was the Navy's first nuclear-powered vessel, it should be recalled. 4. The American cigarette won the Second World War. In 1900, smoking cigarettes was mocked as a fad in the United States and was associated with children and immigrants. The elite and middle classes preferred Turkish and Greek tobacco over flue-cured tobacco from the South and smoked pipes and cigars. However, during World War I, the American government started allocating funds to include American cigarettes in the rations of American soldiers in the hopes that cigarettes would divert doughboys from more harmful vices like opium, which was freely available in Europe. From 7% before the war to 20% by 1920, cigarette use in the U.S. had nearly tripled. The government thought tobacco was such a crucial good that it established a farm program that compensated farmers not to cultivate tobacco in order to maintain the price. Films from the 1930s glamorized smoking, while portraying pipe and cigar use as a snobby or gangster activity. In order to provide cigarettes to American soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines during World War II, the government once more worked with tobacco manufacturers. Officers received Camels and Lucky Strikes while Pall Mall, Rolled Gold, and Chesterfield were the only options available to enlisted troops. As a result, enlisted soldiers were upset about this. While tobacco firms provided billions of cigarettes to the war effort, Uncle Sam also purchased billions more of them. Although exact figures are unknown, it is thought that the government purchased 55 billion cigarettes for the military in 1944 alone. A U.S. service member might exchange American smokes for things like food, alcohol, prisoner information, and even sex overseas. Additionally, a soldier who didn't smoke could earn cash by selling his smokes to his unit. Additionally, cigarettes were utilized for gambling. There were military rest camps throughout Europe with names like Camp Camel, Camp Lucky Strike, and others that were likely derived from the brands of cigarettes that were sold there. American flue-cured tobacco had overrun Europe by 1949. According to surveys, between 85 and 90% of Germans prefer American tobacco to the Turkish or Greek brands they were accustomed to before the war. A carton of authentic Marlboros created in America remained a highly prized possession in Europe well into the 1980s. Because they could sell them to civilians for excessive prices, American bases abroad restricted the number of cigarettes American servicemen could purchase. This clarifies George Washington's adage, "If you can't send money, send tobacco." Thanks for watching. Drop a like and subscribe.